Hi, this lecture is going to cover using analytics. Analytics are a key part of understanding the way that users behave when using your app or game. To correctly iterate on your project after it is launched, it is incredibly important that you integrate analytics before you ship your first version. The first topic we're going to cover is how to correctly use analytics in your code. This is very important because what you do here impacts how much you can actually analyze your data later. This is a common incorrect use of analytics in a student's project. The core action is completing a level, but the student here has created a different event name for every level completed. This is the right way to do it with Mixpanel, using parameters. For every event that you track, you can pass a dictionary of parameters. And for every core action, you should have only one named event. As you can see in this example, level completed has the same name for different levels completed. This will actually allow us to better analyze how our users behave later on because Mixpanel doesn't have an easy way to add different events. So if we did it the wrong way, we would have no easy way of figuring out how many users did 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Whereas if we do it the correct way, Mixpanel lets us decompose user behavior across multiple actions. To really hammer home how important this is, I want to look at a second example. This is, again, the wrong way to do it. The core action here is share. There should not be a different name for every share action. This is the right way to do it, using parameters. The share action name is the same across all events, and the parameters tell us which network we've shared to. This is so important. It cannot be overstated. If you do it the wrong way, it is going to be incredibly difficult to fix after the fact, and you've essentially trashed the data from your early users if you ship with an incorrect Mixpanel implementation. You must do it this way. And if you're ever in doubt about a particular action that you want to track, you're not sure whether you should change the name or whether you should change the parameters, talk to your instructor. Getting this right is incredibly important. And don't forget, you want to get it right before you ship your first version. If you want to learn more about some of the more advanced things you can track, you can go and look up the iOS documentation for Mixpanel. They have a few neat features we're not going to discuss in this lecture that you might be interested in exploring. So what does this look like in Mixpanel? On the left, we can select different views for our data. Here I've selected segmentation. It allows us to see the overall trends for every action that we've logged, as well as decompose those trends by parameter. Here we can see the number of installs and the number of games completed by players of Deep Sea Fury over the course of several months. Now let's take a look at how we can decompose a single event based on the parameters we passed. The parameters you pass into Mixpanel are reflected in the dashboard as properties. In this segmentation view, you can go to this drop-down and select any event. I'm going to select Game Complete. It's the event that I want to decompose. Once I've selected it, I have the option of looking at any given property and decomposing the graph based on that property. I'm going to look at the level, which in the case of Deep Sea Fury tells me how deep a player got before dying. Deep Sea Fury is an infinite runner, but it's broken apart in levels. And if I want to take a closer look at a specific subset of users, say the ones that made it to the beginning parts of the game, I can cross out these other events and only look at the ones that I care about. This allows me to observe trends for every action that I log, both in aggregate and also decomposed by the parameters I pass in. This is super useful because you can see how you're doing over time in meeting your goals. For the developer of Deep Sea Fury, it's a big deal to get players to go as deep as possible. And so to see what percentage of them make it to the deeper levels of the game is indicative of how successful they are at improving the tutorial, at making the gameplay more engaging, at getting players to come back, and so on and so forth. The next topic we want to discuss is retention, defined very simply as the proportion of users who come back to your app. To calculate retention, you need to have an original day where a user downloaded the app, and then a day in the future where you're checking to see if they showed up again. The number of users who downloaded it on the first day and then reopened it on the later day divided by the number who downloaded it on the first day gives you the percentage who were retained. So the example we have here, if on the 4th of July 100 people download your app, and then of those same 100 people, 15 of them open it on the 7th of July, then on your third day, 15% of them were retained. The important nuance here is that you're measuring the percentage of the people who downloaded on a given day. So we're not checking the total number of people who opened the app on July 7th. We're checking how many of our original 100 people opened the app on July 7th. This sounds like it could be a headache to measure, because how do you figure out on any given day what day the users who opened the app actually first downloaded it? The good news is that Mixpanel has a visualization tool to see retention built in. Selecting the Retention tab here on the left gives us a visualization of how many users return after a given number of days from when they first downloaded. So here we can see that 26% of people came back the day after they downloaded the app on April 1st, 2013. Looking across multiple days, you can spot trends. For example, it seems typical that 70 to 75% of users never show up after downloading the app on the first day. This is quite fascinating. And keeping track of these numbers is really, really important. As you modify your tutorial and onboarding experience, this is something you should keep really close track of. And as you modify how much content there is in your app or game and the strategies you use to get people to come back, you will start noticing differences in how often they return multiple days after they first start. Stats like these are actually very good. It's quite rare to see 20% retention a week out. Your app will likely start off with less, and that's fine. This is a goal to work towards, and you can do so because you have access to the data that tells you exactly how you're doing and how each version that you're releasing is improving or hurting your stats. Next up, we have conversions and funnels. A conversion is an industry term for a user taking a desired action, for example, sharing your app or doing an in-app purchase. A funnel is visualizing how users take multiple desired actions one after another. For example, how many users beat level 1, then 2, then 3, then go on and buy something. That whole process is a funnel, and Mixpanel gives us a way to visualize this as well. Let's take a look. On the left here, I've selected the funnel view for a different app called DareMe. DareMe has Facebook login. And I want to see, after installing the app, what percentage of users convert to logging in Facebook, what percentage of those users convert to actually starting to use the app. DareMe is really fun. You actually have to dare people to do certain silly things, and they can send video of themselves doing it back to you, and you challenge yourselves back and forth. And my curiosity here is, how many people am I losing at the Facebook login step? How many of them are actually starting to play? Being able to visualize this is incredibly important. It allows you to make decisions on what to do next, not only based on face-to-face user feedback from your user testing sessions, but it allows you to make decisions based on data. And you can measure for every iteration how your app improves. So to summarize, make sure you track all the core actions in your app or game. The biggest tragedy for a developer like you would be to discover a month from now that you really wish you knew something about how users are behaving, but you forgot to put the one line of code that would allow you to see whether users are doing it. Err on the side of tracking all the things. You can filter out the actions that are not interesting to you in Mixpanel later, but you cannot retroactively get actions you forgot to track. This is a big deal. Next, remember that actions of the same type should have the same name. You should store the relevant information in parameters whenever possible. If you have different action names for each action, you will be in a sea of data and graphs that you will not be able to decipher on Mixpanel. Remember that the segmentation view in Mixpanel will let you see the trends for every action that you are tracking over time. How does it evolve from day to day, week to week, month to month? You get pretty graphs that give you really a quick look as to how your app is doing. And you can decompose a specific action by the parameters you've logged. So if you have a level complete or a share action, you can decompose it by what level number they completed or what network they shared to, for example. Mixpanel also has a retention view, which automatically calculates for you how many of your users return over time. This lets you get a sense of what percentage of people never come back after 1 day, 3 days, a week, and allows you to do things like time your push notifications intelligently, your strategies for getting people addicted more intelligently, and gives you a sense of how you are progressing along your goals. Because a very, very common goal for a developer is, for my next version, I am going to improve retention. Pure and simple. And finally, remember that you can measure conversions using funnels and Mixpanel. This is very useful to figure out where exactly your users are ditching your app. Is it after Facebook login? Is it after level 4? Is it after having to rate the app? Is it after you ask them to invite a friend? What is it that gets people to leave or to stop? And by tracking all the core actions in your app, you can create an arbitrary number of funnels that string together these actions to see what percentage of users progress from one to the other. This is another common tool you can use to set goals and track your progress. You might have a funnel that goes from open app to invite friend to purchase in-app purchase. And you decide, for my next version, I want to increase the percentage of people who purchase an in-app purchase. And then you brainstorm from there to figure out what the new features or iterations you would do for the next version that would improve that statistic. And then you would go back to that same funnel in Mixpanel to see, after the new version had been released, whether or not you achieved your goal. There's a lot more you can do with analytics. There's a lot more you can do with Mixpanel, and as we said in the beginning, you can look at the iOS documentation on Mixpanel for ideas on some of the more advanced features. But this lecture has covered the basics, and I want every single one of you to do at least what was covered in this lecture. Thanks so much.